Okay. Hey guys, this is Brad, Bradley Performance Products. This video is to show you how we're going to convert the drum front brake on the older model T-dubs to a disc brake like we use on the rear for our rear disc brake conversions. So we're basically going to show you how it's done, what modifications you have to make, and I'm going to try to make this as short as possible for you guys. Stay tuned. Okay guys, so basically, here's the short of it. This is what we're removing. The old drum brake, shoe backing plate, and the lever, and the cable, and your brake switch, and your speedo drive. And so, I don't know if you can see in there, but that worm gear in there is your speedometer drive. We don't have a way of replicating that. And so, to do this kit, it is recommended for off-road use only. You do lose your speedometer, the old mechanical drive speedometer. So, you will need to, I would recommend that you go to a digital Hall effect style, you know, the little magnet that you put on your front disc, like Trail Tech Vapor or something compatible. Go to a digital speedometer to solve that problem, because we will lose the old mechanical drive speedometer. I've ran out of old front wheels to show you, so I'm going to disassemble this one to show you step by step what we're doing, and then I'm going to show you how to put it back together. There is one permanent modification to the bike that you cannot get back. We do have to make a cut on this left lower fork leg on the inside. It can be done with, it's aluminum, it can be done with a hacksaw or whatever, but it's permanent at that point. So you're going to be leaving this on there. If you need to go back to your drum brake for any reason, you're going to be replacing this fork leg, which they are pretty readily available on eBay. But anyway, you will have a permanent cut there. This is what comes in the kit. You're going to have a stainless rotor, a twin piston caliper. You're going to have the hub that adapts it, of course the brake hose, the caliper mount, you got a new hydraulic master cylinder, there's the brake pads, and some hardware. And you're going to end up with it looking something like this. It really, really drastically improves stopping power over the old drum. It is equivalent to the stock front disc braking performance on the 2001 and up T-dubs. Let's get started. Okay guys, so you're going to start out by obviously lifting the bike, securing it, pulling the front axle bolt, and pulling the front tire out. It's as simple as that. You'll need a 19 and a 22, I believe, on these older bikes. The drum brake shoe backing plate, there's nothing that holds it in, it just slides out of the wheel. Then you are going to have to go up top to the handlebars, unbolt this lever, slide it off the end of the handlebar, unplug your brake switch, and unscrew, which can be done by hand, unscrew from the back of the speedometer cable, and then that's what you have left. Now onto this modification that we were talking about that's permanent. This is another old style lower left fork leg, and this lug or this extrusion here is what is in the way that prevents us from adding the disc in there. So this portion here has to be removed. It has to be cut back at least this distance to this face. So in other words, when you put a straight edge up against the stock inner face here, that much has to be removed. That much of it. So it's the majority of it. You're cutting off about 3/4 of an inch of this lug. The deal is, could you just go further? Yes, you can. You can just cut it off smooth all the way down to the body. Cut the whole thing off if you want. If you just want to do the minimum, that's how you will scribe your line and make the cut. So you will just lay a straight edge up there, scribe a line on both sides, and then cut this lug with anything, a hacksaw or a grinder or whatever, because like I said, it's soft, it's aluminum. It is permanent, so you'll need to address that before you, I hope most of you will watch this video before you even order the kit. So you'll need to figure out how you're going to perform that portion of the operation. Once that is cut, everything just kind of falls on like a normal simple disc brake. There's not much to it. This will come partially assembled like I try to do. I try to at least get it together for you. This one won't be pre-bled. You'll need to do a little bleeding afterwards, but you'll have your caliper bracket slid into the caliper. Brake pads are in there. It'll basically look just like so. And this part will now go here, and then the wheel will go back in once the disc is on, and the hub. Let me show you how to put the hub in the disc, and we'll be ready to go back together. Okay guys, so here's your OEM brakes back in the OEM wheel, just to show you what you're doing. So this just slides out. We've looked at this before. And here's what you have left. The drum is part of the lacing of the spokes, so you are going to keep the drum. And you're going to take this adapter hub, which this is an old used one because we've used this on a lot of videos on a lot of different bikes, with the bolts that are already in it. I'm going to put that in the holes in the drum, and we're going to bolt it up. Then we're going to take our disc with the supplied bolts, bolt it to the hub. This spacer, you may have a black one, but it goes between the bearing and the caliper mount. So basically this assembly will now go in, and the caliper mount will sit here with the caliper on the disc. I'm going to start the axle from this side over here. Don't forget my axle spacer, the OEM axle spacer on this side. Push it through until I can see it. And then I'm going to put this spacer in. We use this simple U-bolt and these nuts to just saddle the fork. We're not pinching anything. We're just going to saddle the fork to use this as an anti-rotation bracket. So this just keeps the caliper from rotating whenever we apply the brakes. This U-bolt needs to be double nutted or nutted on both sides of the bracket. So you slide it over the fork first and start the first two nuts. You're going to run those down almost all the way. And then we're going to put them in the bracket. A little too far. Back it off of here. Like this. And we're going to put two more nuts on the back side. Now we're going to adjust this in and out to our liking. So I'm going to go in a little further. If we don't want to leave a gap here on the outside, again, the loop portion of it here doesn't matter. We're only using the front and the back of this to prevent it from rotating. So just something like this. and then jam the nuts together. Like this. Okay. So it's really as simple as that. I'm going to tighten down my axle nut. I didn't forget about my OEM spacer on the right-hand side. Don't forget about that or you'll be doing it over. We didn't have to mess with any bearings or anything like that. You saw that I put the spacer in on this side that goes between the bearing and the new caliper bracket. Caliper's on, this portion's installed. Next we're going to bolt up the hose and the master cylinder and just tidy everything up the way we like it. So the only portion of the suspension that moves is from here to here, so that's where we want this to flex. So everything else needs to remain fairly rigid. So this clamp here that we send will pinch the hose tight enough that it will stay there. We want this assembly from here to here to stay rigid. So you'll just run directly from the caliper to this point and pinch this down, and that will keep this portion rigid. And now we'll go up to the top. Okay, so now for the top side, a couple more things. We don't want this section to be moving, so we want the hose to stay pretty rigid up here. So there will be another clamp. And you can do this however you like, but I put a clamp here. You could put it here. But like I said, this section is where we want the hose to be able to flex, so the rest of it will stay rigid up here. So I've ran the hose this way over the top of the forks to the new master cylinder. This bolts on just like any traditional master cylinder, and luckily we do have the mirror mount if you still want to use a mirror in this master cylinder. It is the same master cylinder that is found, I believe, on the XT250. So it has worked very well. Last but not least, the other problem. The old style throttle assembly was never designed for a master cylinder to be here. The way the cables are routed, they come out of this housing when it is rotated up into its stock position. You can see what I've had to do here. I've rotated it down, and so now the start button is kind of on the underside. It would normally be here in the front, which puts these cables right here where the master cylinder reservoir is. And there really is no way around it. I've rotated this thing 1,000 different ways, and aside from changing to a different throttle assembly, this is the only thing that I have found that we can do and keep the stock throttle assembly, is to loosen it, rotate it up, and again, now your start button is a little bit more on the underside now, and it will allow the cables to run right in front of the master cylinder. Not ideal, but it works. You will need to bleed this kit. I would recommend starting by obviously bench bleeding. Make sure that you don't have any high spots in the hose where air could settle, but open the lower bleeder and open the reservoir cap and fill, and just continue filling and just let it flow on its own, let it gravity bleed on its own until you have fluid down there at the caliper. Then you should be able to close that valve and start pressure bleeding. Once you get all the air out of it, this system works great. So I don't know what else I need to show you. Message me down in the comments below if there's something that I've missed, but it's pretty simple to convert, and it's not perfect, but it does work well, and it drastically improves braking performance. Like I said, it feels like the 2001 and newer front brakes. So thanks for watching, and I appreciate you guys a whole bunch. Thanks again.